Hello, everyone. Welcome to Living Live at 5. Okay, we're going to talk, but you're shaking your head. You like the music, Symone?
I love the music. This is great, Don.
Isn't it cute? It's cool, right? So let me tell you, this is our show where we talk to our subscribers. You know all about this whole digital thing.
Yeah.
And yesterday, Sunny Hostin was my guest. You know the traffic in New York because of the UN, right? It's crazy. She was about 15 minutes late. And the people were like, Don is on CP time. I'm like, nope, I'm not on CP time. My guests are. So it's Symone on CP time today.
Well, you know, I was scheduled quite tight today. So we are tardy because of me, everyone, not Don.
She's not tardy for the party. She is. Look, we know you're very busy, Symone, so we appreciate you being on. No worries. I'm so glad to have you. So let me tell you what I'm going to do. Let's take Symone off until I go through this, and then we'll bring her back in. So Symone, it's so good to see you. Thank you very much. So from Mark Robinson to Eric Adams, it has not been the greatest of weeks for black men in politics. Black women, on the other hand, or one black woman, I should say, in particular, is doing just fine. According to a brand new poll, finally there's some good news on the polls for you guys, okay? Because you were mad at me because I was giving you some polls and you were like, we're not digging that. This is a poll from YouGov. Vice President Harris is holding her edge over the former President Trump in Michigan and in Pennsylvania. In Michigan, the survey found that Harris is leading Trump 48% to 43%. That's overall. In the Keystone State of Pennsylvania, Harris is ahead 48% to 46%. It's tight, but it is still a lead. So we have so much to discuss, and I am blessed, as you just saw, to be joined by another brilliant, badass black woman, and that is none other than Symone Sanders-Townsend. She's the co-host of MSNBC's The Weekend. Prior to that, she was a chief spokesperson and senior advisor to the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. And before that, she was a contributor where we met on CNN, and we gained this great, great, great friendship. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Don. It's great to join you. I miss you. It's good to be here.
I miss you as well. So Symone, before we dig into the nitty-gritty, I just need the audience to understand just how far we go back and how much I adore you. And I hope this isn't too much of a curveball, but this is one of my favorite clips of all time on cable news ever. On now, and I want to talk about the former White House aide, Omarosa Manigault New.
It's Black History Month. We got to talk about Omarosa. All right. I'm just saying, look, it is Black History Month, okay? Carter G. Woodson did not go to the mat to get Negro History Week that eventually turned into Black History Month for us to talk about Omarosa on her apology tour and her attempt to salvage her reputation on a reality television show. Not during Black History Month, guys. Okay. These are the facts. Scott, you gonna back me up?
All right.
Scott Jennings is a national treasure, okay? A national treasure.
I don't know that those moments exist on cable news anymore. Those were the days. We had great chemistry, so I love you. That was fun. That comes back every Black History Month.
Every Black History Month comes back every time I'm in the airport. As we were, Melissa Murray and I have this special about Black women in America that's airing on Sunday on MSNBC. And as we traveled across the country, Black women, even as we're in the airport, they are coming up like, I love you and Don. I'm like, me and Don ain't been on the same TV together in I don't know how long, but the people love the clip. So
because it comes back, it goes viral the beginning of every Black History Month. Someone will say, we cannot start Black History Month off without this. And Omarosa needs to have a better sense of humor because she gets mad at us. Anyway, we won't go there. Okay, so Symone, because I'm so blessed to have you. You're the former senior advisor to the vice president. I just want to mainly stick to the presidential race this evening. However, I feel the need. I want to catch our audience up, you and our audience up. I think on the biggest news of the day, and that's this indictment from the New York City mayor, Eric Adams. 5 federal charges related to bribery, wire fraud, conspiracy, and soliciting campaign contributions from foreign nationals. My question to you is, first of all, what do you make of this indictment?
Look, we know that the Southern District of New York, the federal prosecutors, they don't bring indictments without very, ironclad information and details. They had to go they had to do an investigation over months. But in America, folks are innocent until proven guilty. And I think Mayor Adams deserves that presumption just as much as anyone else. It's the same presumption that folks gave afforded to the former president, Donald Trump. Separate from the legal woes, though, because this is an election cycle where for even the mayor of New York, the legal and the political are inextricably intertwined. Yes, he has that presumption of innocence, and his legal issues and troubles are going to play out in the court of law. That's how it works in America. Concurrently, though, because he is still elected, you do have to look at breaking down the analysis of what is happening at City Hall in New York. It is something that is just truly unprecedented.
How do you see this playing out? Do you
resigning?
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you see him resigning?
Perhaps with some additional pressure, but I watched that press conference this morning that Mayor Adams did. And not only for what he said, but for the people who came out before him and were standing behind him. And he had some heavyweights within the African-American community, specifically in New York. Hazel Dukes, the godmother of the New York NAACP, Bishop Daughtry, just a lot of people whom, if they wouldn't be standing behind him if he was going quietly into the night. So I just think that this is something that is going to play out over the course of weeks, actually. And depending, the Southern District of New York, federal prosecutors, they usually do not come out and give us more than what we get when the charging document is made public. And so today we heard from the Southern District of New York. We heard from the prosecutors about why they brought this case and what the charges are. And we usually would not hear anymore. But today we also heard from the mayor, who gave a press conference, which I was watching the press conference just like I couldn't believe this was happening.
I
Two questions.
I can't believe he talked.
The staffers, I'm sure, and the lawyers are like, oh, what is happening? But in a day and age where he is not only fighting in court, I think he's also fighting in the court of public opinion.
Right.
And I don't know how this is going to play out, but it is just in general a sad day for New Yorkers, and frankly, a distraction, yet another distraction for Democrats. But at the end of the day, for all those people that say, the deep state and the government is being weaponized just against Republicans, this is a Justice Department that has indicted the sitting mayor of New York, who is a Democrat, elected officials in Jersey who are Democrats, a senator. Like, this is the son of the president of the United States.
You must have been watching our show this morning. We talked about all that, but for those of the folks, the MAGA right, saying, oh, they're going after Republicans. Merrick Garland has been going after Democrats. The Southern District of New York has been going after Democrats. It appears that we have, if you're a Democrat, you may not like it, but it appears that we have a Justice Department that is impartial and which, plays by the rules of the law rather than the rules of the cult of personality person. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and frankly, that's the kind of Justice Department, frankly, that we want to have. But Mayor Adams and his allies, I've been seeing this, statements that have been flying back and forth, and just talking to people who live and work in New York, and who are allies and some even foes of the mayor and his allies. And he maintains his innocence and notes that this will play out in court, and he believes he'll be vindicated. Now, that's what people always say. But again, we have to wait and see. But at the end of the day, the question is, can he govern? Does he have the confidence of the people? And yes, he has the confidence of those heavyweight leaders that stood behind him this morning. But are the people going to demand that the mayor resign? We don't know.
Yeah,
Again, we're just 24 hours out.
All right. So let's talk about this. But, I was going to say nothing. I was going to talk about baby oil, but we'll move on. So let's talk about the state of the race, okay? Vice President Kamala Harris focused on foreign policy today, meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. She did that at the White House. Meanwhile, former President Donald Trump launched Trump watches. That is his newest, the merch that he's selling. The watches are $499 to $100,000. This man is embarrassing. The Trump Victory Tourbillon, a bejeweled golden watch. This is crazy. Anyway, so we got two candidates. That's why I hate false equivalency in the media. You have the vice president meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House, and you have Donald Trump today launching his watch line.
And apparently, Don, right before we came on, from Donald Trump's social media account on Truth Social, he tweeted what is apparently a message, or he posted what is apparently a message that President Zelensky, through an aide, sent to him, and he has now posted that on social for all to see. This is, as someone who worked in the federal government, who worked in the White House, that is just the opposite of how diplomacy is conducted, and it is frankly reckless. But these are the choices that folks have in this election.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Who's undecided at this point? How can anybody be undecided?
Well, you know what, Don, as you know, I've been traveling across the country and whatnot with my MSNBC colleague Melissa Murray, specifically talking to Black women for a special that we have on Sunday night launching, Black Women in America, The Road to 2024. Tune in at 9 p.m. Eastern.
I was going to ask you what time. 9 p.m. Eastern.
9 p.m. There were women that we spoke to for this special. Some of them Gen Z women, some of them millennial Black women who said they didn't know if they were going to vote or whom they were going to vote for. And so Melissa and I both always followed up. We said, so do you mean you were voting for Trump, or you're trying to decide between Trump and Vice President Harris? Or at one point it was Donald Trump or Joe Biden. And the answer was always, oh, no, I'm not voting for Trump, but I just don't know if I'm voting. And so when some people said that noted that, said that they felt like their vote didn't matter. There was a young woman that we spoke to that said she voted for Secretary Clinton in 2016. Secretary Clinton won the popular vote, and Secretary Clinton wasn't the president. And she just really feels like her vote doesn't matter. So there is this sentiment. Some of the undecided voters out there, right? Some of them their undecidedness is about maybe if they think their vote matters. Some of it, not just for Black women, unmotivated, right? So not just Black women, but people across the board, right? They're uninspired, or they don't, we've been paying attention for like years on this election, 2 years, but some people are just tuning in. So they're like, I don't know.
But can I say what I think it is? Because I did a tour across the country.
Yes, I saw you. I was talking to
people. Were like, who are these Black people, right? But look, you and I know you can vote for whoever you want to. But if you're going to do it, then you should be informed about it. And I believe, Symone, that there's so much misinformation.
Yes.
Now, as we know, I love you. I was on cable news. You're on cable news. The young folks and many people are not tuning in. They're right here, right? And so they're getting in social media. They're on digital and these podcasts.
They're watching the clips and
there's no editorial,
just reading the headlines. They're
no
not
editorial
reading the
standards. You can lie, you can give misinformation, and people will believe it. I think that is part of it. I think that's a huge part of it.
I mean, we talked about this in a piece of our special. This part, I don't believe is making it to air. So I'm gonna give y'all a little something that people won't see tomorrow on Sunday. But we discussed this with the millennial Black women that we talked to. We went to my nail shop in Washington, D.C. One of the women that joined us, she's from North Carolina, lives in North Carolina, and is voting in North Carolina this election season. Another young woman who is Muslim, young Black woman, she used to live in North Carolina up until recently. And then Diamond, who joined us, currently lives in Washington, D.C. We talked about the misinformation. I said, do y'all just read the headlines? And they said, yeah. And then they tried to blame it on the Gen Zers, the millennials. We always trying to say it's not us, it's the younger people. Yeah. And something that came up, I said, well, you all said criminal justice reform was important to you. They said, yeah, we don't know where she stands on criminal justice reform. And mind you, this was a little bit after she was the top of the ticket. And I asked the women in the room, I said, what if I told you that it was Kamala Harris when she was the Attorney General that pioneered body cameras? And she was the first in the country to have her officers wear body cameras. They were like, what? I said, I said, okay, so do you believe me? And they said, well, is it true? I said, it is true. I said, do you believe the headlines that say she locked up Black men? And they said, well, I don't believe she locked up millions, but maybe, a couple thousand. And I said, do y'all know that when she was prosecuting it, when she was in the courtroom, her specialty was, child molesters, predators, women, like people who were taking advantage of women and girls. And they said, no. I said, okay, the headlines and the misinformation and the disinformation is real. Now, I think that there is a lot of it going around, and it has been for a while, as it relates to, the vice president, the president. But there's also what I would call misinformation and disinformation about Donald Trump, specifically maybe about his record. There's a distortion of the record. People got rose-colored glasses on. And again, I just want people to vote in this election. And Melissa Murray and I, we set out as we were having our conversations to get just a pulse for what people were feeling. And what they thought and if they were going to vote. And I would
Okay.
note everybody that said they weren't voting. Melissa was like, now you at least got to make
You
that decision.
got to vote. You just gave me an idea. I won't share it because you'll steal it. I know you will. And it's a good idea that I'm going to do before the election. But here's the thing. Since we're talking about women, let's focus on women with you. And you know Stephanie Ruhle last night
Yes.
interviewed the vice president. And they talked about Donald Trump. By the way, let me just say this. You were talking about misinformation and her locking up black men, the false narrative that's out there. Remember D.L. Hughley at the convention said, I apologize because I spread that false information.
Yeah.
And he was just he's on the show that we put on today, that we dropped today just before you, is our interview with D.L. Hughley. So I encourage everyone to watch that.
Oh, I'm going to watch that after
You should click on it. Okay, but Stephanie Ruhle interviewed the vice president yesterday, and he talked about Donald Trump saying that he wanted to be the protector. He was going to be the protector of women. Here it is.
I'm out of time, but then I just want to ask you a question from my gut.
Okay.
Because today we're talking about we're talking about the economy.
Yeah.
And people don't think often about reproductive rights being an economic issue, but it is. A woman's ability to plan her future, her education, her life. Today, and in the last few days, Donald Trump keeps talking about it and how in overturning Roe v. Wade, he helped women. He protected women. He says they're miserable today, they're poorer today, they're more vulnerable today. He said he will be the protector of women if elected. Can you respond to that?
So Donald Trump is also the person who said women should be punished for exercising a decision that they rightly should be able to make about their own body and their future. So I think we would all agree that as a result of that perspective that he has about women, he also then chose 3 members of the United States Supreme Court who did as he intended, undid the protections of Roe v. Wade, and now in state after state, you see laws being passed that do punish women. Laws that, I mean, most recently, a heartbreaking story resulted in a young woman dying, a mother of a 6-year-old. Heart-wrenching stories. And that's for the listener, much less their family. So, look, I think the thing about Donald Trump is that, you know, I don't think the women of America need him to say he's going to protect them. The women of America need him to trust them.
Can we trust you?
Yes.
Yeah. Should we trust you? Yes.
Stephanie Ruhle, can I just take a moment to give all the snaps to my colleague Stephanie Ruhle, because they're all day today. People have been like, oh, and yesterday when they found out she had the interview, they're like, oh, why Stephanie Ruhle and talking to, look, Stephanie's background is in the economy, her economics. She's a financial Wall Street person, right? Yeah. And so in an election, and where we're all talking about the economy, where the Wall Street folks, the media apparatus people, and even the voters are like, what is the economic plan? It does make sense for Stephanie Ruhle and her team to proactively ask for this interview to talk about the economy in depth. And frankly, smart on the Harris's campaign part to say yes, to have a sit down with somebody that understands the issues and will ask the direct questions.
How'd she do, you think?
I thought Stephanie did was
no,
Stephanie
the vice
amazing.
President.
The vice president, I thought she carried the same tone and tenor from the speech into that interview. And by that, I mean, she hit all the marks that you would want your candidate to hit in doing an appearance like this, from the speech to the interview. It was accessible, right? You didn't have to be an economist to understand what they were talking about.
Well, I want to play something because, and I think you're gonna respond to this, and I'm gonna like the way you respond. I know, because you're always honest. I saw Stephanie on with Chris Hayes last night. And because, you know, Stephanie was getting, like you said, she's getting all kinds of guff. Oh, it was a softball interview. It was this, it was that, it was that. And when I saw Stephanie on with Chris Hayes, I was like, you know what? She ain't never lied. She's right. Here she is on with Chris after the interview.
Stephanie Ruhle, NBC News senior business analyst, host of the 11th Hour, joins me now. Stephanie, can I just say that was a great interview? And I thought you pressed her on really important stuff. It was also, I just thought the whole thing was refreshingly substantive. This was you can say I don't like that policy or I do like that policy, but it really was about, like, here, the earth we live in, the kinds of decisions you're going to make, and it wasn't pie in the sky stuff. So very, very well done job. Let me just start by saying that.
Okay, well, I'm just going to sit here and soak in those compliments, so we don't have to talk about anything else. But I think what you're actually complimenting is that it was a normal interview, Chris. That's actually what it was. It was a normal interview. It was a person running to be the president of the United States, and for 25 minutes, we talked about their vision, and we talked about policy.
Okay, so that's, sorry, the clip cut off short, but that's the whole point. So people are used to these contentious interviews because we've been, for the last decade, we've been in this madness about where we have to continually fact check someone who talks about black jobs and all this craziness, and the interviews, she's a normal person. I was like, you know what, she's right.
It is, to be very clear, I don't think when someone whether you're running for president, governor, Congress, or dog catcher or mayor, I don't think every time you sit down for an interview, it should be contentious. Frankly, it never actually needs to be contentious. You can ask the direct questions without being an a-hole, for lack of a better term. And so it doesn't need to be contentious, but you're right. Because we have had political figures, and let's just be very clear, I'm talking about Donald Trump and people who have subscribed to Trumpism, who have elected to follow in his footsteps or try to take it further. The adversarial interview is now more of the norm than I think it used to be. Like, sometimes politicians lie, okay? Democrats lie, Republicans lie. Sometimes people get out here with policies and say they're gonna do something and they're not telling the truth, okay? And then they have to go sit down and interview, and we gotta sit there and say, now, I know,
Mr.
now, Mr. So-and-so, now, Madam X.
Yeah.
I know you said X, Y, and Z, but the data says, okay, the people say.
That comes from the fake news organizations. The New York Times review today. In her discussion with a friendly interviewer, the vice president again presented herself as a champion of the middle class and hit many of the same themes from her pro-business economic speech earlier in the day. She largely avoided direct questions about how she would govern and why some voters remain fond of former President Donald J. Trump's stewardship of the economy. Another quote from the New York Times: Ms. Harris responded to fairly basic and predictable questions with roundabout responses that did not provide a substantive answer.
Oh, it sounds like the Times is upset that they didn't get the interview, and some people won't like that I
gunning
said
for
that,
a Donald Trump presidency.
or they're gunning for a Donald Trump. Look, here's the reality: just two things. One, from a former communications person perspective, right? Like I have prepped Joe Biden for interviews with you, and sat down and been in the back when he had done an interview with you, and I'm like, rap. And Don's gonna go through the interview because he's not done with his questions, and Joe Biden was gonna continue to answer because
it was usually him going on. You would be rapping, and he's the one who would talk.
Yes, he would talk through my rap, and it's like, well, sir, it's your interview, so go ahead. But when you prep a principal for an interview, and then the person sits down for an interview, one of the just frankly tools and tactics as a comms person is that you go over with your person, like with your principal, like in the prep, they say like they might ask this, and like you have to decide if you want to answer their question or if you want to stay on what you're talking about. And the ways in which that comes across and that happens, sometimes it is evasive, and the principal is actually the person is not answering the question at all, and then it's on the interviewer to redirect and kind of pin them down. Or sometimes they hit on it, but then there's a little bit of a pivot, or they speak to a broader issue, and it seems fine. Like, I think what the criticism from the Times is that she didn't answer the question exactly. And I'm like, and you know what? I'd be fine actually if that was the Times' consistent criticism. But when Donald Trump is asked about what his plan is for childcare at the New York Economic Club, and his answer is, I'm gonna institute tariffs on China and everybody, but really China, and like 15%, maybe 20% tariffs, and the tariffs are gonna pay for the childcare. To me, that begs a follow-up question. Well, sir, first of all, Mr. Former President, I'm not trying to be offensive, but how would you describe a tariff? Because we got to now go back to the basis of economics, because he doesn't even know what a tariff is.
It's a tax on the consumer because the producers, right, they end up passing it along. And
then childcare, which is the biggest bill for many.
That was a word salad answer.
It was a word salad answer, but my point here is that the New York Times covered that. And the way that they wrote it up is that they seem to decode what Donald Trump said. And in the write-up that I read, in the article that I read, it made him sound coherent. And there was not, they said, his plan was tariffs, and there's some consternation. No, there ain't no consternation. Tariffs ain't gonna pay for childcare.
Right.
I'm sorry. It's not gonna pay for childcare. And so I just think in this election, Vice President Harris, she needs to answer direct questions. And she did that yesterday. I think she has been, she has been doing that, I think definitely more consistently. And I think she's going to continue to do it because that's the only way she's going to close the gap and get elected. But we cannot demand these things of the vice president that we are not demanding of Donald Trump.
Right.
Like this false equivalency, it actually drives me crazy. And people will say, oh, you used to work for her. I would feel the same way if we were talking about Joe Manchin. Like, I just really think that, like, please don't gaslight me and don't gaslight the voters of this country. Mm-hmm. We deserve substantive coverage from the media apparatus that is real and that speaks to the concerns that voters have for both of the candidates. So ask this man, does he know what a tariff is?
Yes. Well, you know how I feel about false equivalency, which is why I'm sitting in the independent media and not somewhere else. But look, and I said what I said about the New York Times, right? Because, what'd you say?
One could argue you were correct.
I said what I said about the Times, and you're right, because the rules are different for her than it is for him. Really, there are no rules for him. I want to play one more thing before, because I know you have your very, very tight schedule. This is today, the vice president with Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House. Here it is.
History has shown us if we allow aggressors like Putin to take land with impunity, they keep going. And Putin could set his sights on Poland, the Baltic states, and other NATO allies. We also know that other would-be aggressors around the world are watching to see what happens in Ukraine. If Putin is allowed to win, they will become emboldened. And history reminds us, and history is so clear in reminding us, the United States cannot and should not isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. Isolation is not insulation. So then, the United States supports Ukraine not out of charity, but because it is in our strategic interest. We will continue to provide the security assistance Ukraine needs to succeed on the battlefield, as demonstrated by President Biden's significant announcement earlier today.
So, Symone, my question is, she's there, she looks presidential. Can you see her in that role? What did you think?
Yeah, I think Vice President Harris could be President Harris. The folks that will have the final say on that is, in fact, the voters of this country. And I know people see the enthusiasm in the polls, and they're like, oh, she's got it in the bag. She doesn't. This is a very close race. Donald Trump could also, he could prevail in November. The difference will be what the people say. I know it feels like the people don't have the power some days, but truly, the people do have the power. And so if you don't like what you were hearing from Donald Trump, and you would like to, not live in a country with somebody that says they would like to be a dictator on day one, I encourage you to vote, okay? Yeah. Because if not, people might wake up a week after Election Day and be quite confused.
Hey, well, how do you feel about the polls, real quick? I said it was the last one, but I want to know.
I am not partial to, because of my, background and came from campaigns, to national polls for a presidential election this close to Election Day. I think battleground state polls are actually more telling, but even still, you need larger sample sizes. So the polls indicative, not predictive, and I think the polls are just telling us it's close, and it's going to be close. And it being close is not a function of Vice President Harris isn't a good candidate or Donald Trump is a really great candidate. It is a function of the fact that our elections, literally, in recent history, they have not been landslide elections. They've been close. Millions of people vote and razor thin margins. So the margins matter. Black women, okay, are going to make a difference. Black men, but we have a special about Black women, so I just encourage people to watch.
That's what I was going to say. You read my mind. Symone Sanders, Before you go, I just want to encourage everyone to watch your upcoming special. It's called Black Women in America, The Road to 2024. It's airing Sunday, September 29th, this coming Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central. And then you can go down the line all the way to the West Coast on MSNBC. It's streaming on Peacock as well. The special is hosted by Symone Sanders and also, of course, legal analyst Melissa Murray.
And we got to add the Townsend, Don. My husband will probably text me while we all here like, Don is not adding the Townsend.
Oh, Symone, I'm so used to saying Symone. So, I'm sorry. You know, you're a married lady now.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a married man.
It was right here. Yes.
Oh, wait. Symone, so you went to your nail shop. I was going to ask you, are you wearing what they call now stilettos?
Yes, these are stilettos. I will say, because I know we got to go, but I did these myself. My nail lady is probably going to be looking for me, but I've been very busy, so I haven't had a chance to get back to the nail shop. But I am wearing stiletto nails, but I definitely did them myself, okay?
You look great.
Self-taught.
Someone wants to say hello. I see yours. Dave Ehrenberg is here. He's our next guest. Say hello to Symone Sanders.
Hello, Symone.
Dave Ehrenberg, you going to break down what's happening with the legals all over America for us?
Yes, and I love being on your show. So
we love
let's
having
do it
you.
again.
We're going to have you back on the weekend, okay?
Symone, and what's your show on the weekend?
The weekend, Saturday, literally, we are on The Weekend, and it's called The Weekend on MSNBC, Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. Eastern to 10 a.m. Eastern. Myself, Alicia Menendez, and Michael Steele come for the great analysis, stay for Michael Steele, and all of just the amazing, interesting, hilarious things he has to say.
Symone, do we have to talk about Michael Steele? I'm kidding. I'm joking. I'm doing you. I love Michael. I'm kidding.
We love Michael. Yes.
You be well. I know you're busy. Keep up the great work. We'll be watching you this weekend, and we'll watch your special as well in the evening.
Thanks
Symone
so much.
Sanders-Townsend. Thank you very much. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Love you. So, folks, I want to bring in now my next guest. His name is Dave Ehrenberg. He's a state attorney for Palm Beach County, Florida. He is also the former Florida State Senator, White House Fellow in the Treasury Department, and he is a great friend to this show. Dave, thank you.
It is so good to be on Lemonation.
It's good.
I saw that.
With the Lemonation, the Lemonheads. Look, they're all in the chat. So you can't see it on. Oh, they're on your monitor as well, so you can see that. So guys, be nice to him. He knows everything. He's going to get us caught up on everything. So I want to ask you about what happened. What's happening with? Can you speak to what's happening with the mayor, because of New York City, Eric Adams?
Yes.
When the SDNY gets their hooks into you. What? They have a 97% conviction rate.
You don't want the feds to come after you. The feds have pretty much unlimited resources. They have very few cases compared to state prosecutors. They have limited discovery. So if you're a defendant, you're not going to get the evidence that you're going to get if you're involved in a state prosecution. They've got draconian sentences, really much tougher sentences than at the state. They got a lot of advantages. That's why they have like a 97% conviction rate. So unless you're Mark Cuban, you're probably going to lose. Now, the mayor has some good lawyers representing him, including I saw Alex Spiro, who had most recently represented Alec Baldwin. Remember Alec Baldwin's case? Yeah. Didn't even go to the jury. It was tossed. So he's someone who's known for being a really good lawyer, even though he rubs some people the wrong way.
Yeah. Well, let's listen. This is Damian Williams, and we all, the audience, you're familiar with Damian Williams. He is the attorney for the Southern District of New York. He's the one that did the Puffy or Diddy press conference. So here he is talking about the charges for Mayor Eric Adams, and then it's long, so we'll cut out of it, but I just want you to hear it. Here it is.
Everyone, thank you for gathering. My name is Damian Williams, and I'm the United States Attorney here in the Southern District of New York. Today we are announcing campaign finance, bribery, and conspiracy charges against Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City. As the indictment alleges, Mayor Adams engaged in a long-running conspiracy in which he solicited and knowingly accepted illegal campaign contributions from foreign donors and corporations. As we allege, Mayor Adams took these contributions even though he knew they were illegal, and even though he knew these contributions were attempts by a Turkish government official and Turkish businessmen to buy influence with him. We also allege that the mayor sought and accepted well over $100,000 in luxury travel benefits from some of the same foreign actors who arranged many of the illegal campaign contributions. These benefits included free international business class flights and opulent hotel rooms in foreign cities.
So
the mayor had a duty to disclose these gifts on his annual
Dave, how
public
serious are those
disclosure
charges?
forms so
And
that the
what
public
could they
could see
garner for
who.
him if found guilty?
So far, he can get up to 45 years in prison.
Wow.
Just the wire fraud count alone can get you up to 20 years in prison. That's like a federal prosecutor's best friend. Easy to prove, hard to defend. You can get up to 20 years. This is what I mean about those very tough sentences. Now, I think this is closer to the beginning in all this because there are 4 separate federal investigations. This is just the results of one, and I don't think the results are final yet. I think that there are other things yet to come, other shoes to drop. And so you could have a superseding indictment. So the mayor may want to resign to pay more time, more attention to these charges because he's facing the rest of his life in prison.
Adams was pretty defiant in response to his charges, right? He said, quote, based on what I read, if it's campaign violations, I know I don't violate the campaigns, Adams said. If it's foreign donors, I know I don't take money from foreign donors. And I verbalize that to the team, both in writing and communication, and we will continue to do that. What do you make of that?
Well, that, as of right now, will be his defense. Lack of intent, lack of mens rea. If he didn't know that these straw donors were a front for the Turkish government or that they were foreign donors, then he can get away with it. The problem is, it's hard for him to deny that he didn't know because he tried to delete messages. He tried to have like a paper trail to cover it up. He had meetings with his staff where he told them to leave their phones outside the room. I mean, when you do that, you know something shady's going down. I mean, there's this anecdote in the indictment. It's really telling. They tried to get his personal cell phone through a subpoena, the feds. And when they got him, he only gave them his work phones. The personal phone, which contained a lot of the damaging stuff, allegedly, was somewhere at home. And he had changed the password, like he was preparing for the feds to get it. And so when the feds said, give us your new password, his answer was, I don't remember what it is. Does that sound like a guy who is above board, right? Not good.
Well, I mean, look, as innocent until proven guilty, but he's talking about what you said about these fake paper trails. This is Damian Williams again.
In addition to not disclosing these benefits, Adams sometimes created fake paper trails to try to cover up the travel benefits he solicited and received. Let me give you one example. Adams wrote emails to his staff suggesting he paid for his 2017 business class flights on the Turkish airline when, as we allege, he did not. Those flights were worth a lot of money. Just one ticket alone cost more than $10,000. But months after taking the flights, Adams wrote an email to a staff member and told the staff member that he had left cash in her desk drawer and that she should send the money to the Turkish airline to pay for a trip he had already taken. As the indictment makes clear, that's just a clumsy cover-up.
What do you think?
Yeah, it shows a guy who's trying to cover it up, who knew what he did was wrong. And his defense says, I didn't know any of this. It's harder and harder to show that when you take actions to prevent people from finding out what you did. If you really didn't know, then why are you trying to hide it?
Do you think he can get out of this?
You know, I think it's going to be tougher when we find out that his close associates, you know, the ones who had their phones and computers taken a year ago, how some of them have flipped on him. I would bet you some would, because when you're facing an orange jumpsuit yourself, you want to save your own hide, and I think that they'll flip.
So we saw his press conference today. I'm sure you saw that, right, of him saying, I'm innocent, and basically saying that this was a sort of a witch hunt for him. But also last night he tried to get out in front of it. I was surprised that he spoke today, and I was surprised that he spoke last night trying to get out in front of it. This was him speaking last night.
My fellow New Yorkers, it is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target. And a target I became. For months, leaks and rumors have been aimed at me in an attempt to undermine my credibility and paint me as guilty. Just this past week, they searched the home of our new police commissioner, looking for documents from 20 years ago. just 1 week after he joined my administration. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit.
Doesn't sound like he's going to resign.
Well, not yet, but that's pre-first appearance. That's pre-arraignment. It's going to get hairy for him. Who does he sound like, by the way, in that statement? Who do you think he sounds like?
Donald Trump?
Exactly.
That's what I was going to say, but I wanted to say to Symone is that we're in the time now, because we spoke about this just briefly in the beginning of our interview, is that we're in the era of never apologize and never admit guilt and just keep moving forward.
Right. And everyone, like Trump says, they back the blue until they see a cop walking up their driveway with a subpoena. So he's doing the Trump playbook thing. It is hard, though, to think that the Merrick Garland Department of Justice is targeting him. Why? He's a Democrat, our biggest city, because he said that he didn't agree with the Biden administration on immigration. The same Merrick Garland who's also prosecuting the president's son,
Right.
Robert Menendez, Henry Cuellar.
Oh, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. What did I want to ask you? Crap, I forgot. I lost my train of thought here, but I forgot what I wanted to ask you about. But again, why would they be targeting the mayor of New York City? That seems a little bit odd, don't you think? That to say that he's being targeted?
Or maybe, just maybe, hear me out.
Oh wait, I know what my question was. Every time this happens, when the Diddy thing happened, same question. When this happened, same question. When other things happen, they're like, well, Donald Trump has been indicted. Why isn't Donald Trump in jail? Why is Diddy in jail and Donald Trump not in jail? Why is the mayor of New York possibly going to jail and Donald Trump's not in jail? He has multiple cases.
You know what is interesting? The Department of Justice could not indict Donald Trump when Donald Trump was president because they have a policy against indicting a sitting president. They don't have the same policy about indicting a sitting mayor.
But he's not president now.
That's right. Well, they
But
did
he's
indict
indicted.
him.
But people want to know why he's not in jail.
Well, he wasn't. I mean, this guy's not in jail either.
Yeah, Diddy's
Right?
in jail.
Diddy's in jail. Well, one of them is being accused of violence, sex trafficking, racketeering. If Trump were accused of those same things, I think he'd get pretrial detention.
All right. So let's talk about all those things that you mentioned, because I have it right here. So the Justice Department, under the leadership of Attorney General Merrick Garland, that's the Southern District of New York, but the Justice Department in general, under the Attorney General leadership of Merrick Garland, successfully prosecuted Democratic Senator of New Jersey, as you mentioned, Bob Menendez, during his reelection bid. Successfully prosecuted President Joe Biden's son while Biden was seeking reelection and sitting in the Oval Office, right? Criminally indicted incumbent Congressman Cuellar in Texas during his reelection bid, right? Raided the home of an incumbent Democratic mayor, Oakland Sheng Tao, ahead of the recall election. Launched an investigation targeting an incumbent Democratic Congresswoman, Missouri's Cori Bush, during her reelection bid. This department is after Democrats? What happened to the deep state Justice Department that's targeting Donald Trump and Republicans?
Well, how do you explain that they went after MAGA Republican Matt Gaetz? Huh? How do you explain that?
Well, they dropped the case.
Oh, that's right. I set you up there.
Yeah.
Do you remember who went after Matt Gaetz? It was Bill Barr,
Right.
who is Donald Trump's attorney general. That's when the investigation started. And then Merrick Garland dropped it. So the thinking that this is a politicized, weaponized DOJ, shame on anyone who says that. They need to grow up.
You don't believe that there's obviously. What happens with Matt Gaetz?
Well, fellow Florida man?
Yes. Well, I mean, you know the story. I think that this has happened before. Mm-hmm. The case got dropped. It somehow came back up. I don't know legally. You'll have to explain to me how that happened. I'm not sure. But he's accused of being at a party with underage girls. I think it was a 17-year-old, allegedly. And now it's coming back to haunt him if it is true. Can you explain to us what's going on? And this is in Florida.
Right. The DOJ's already said they're not going to prosecute Gaetz for this. So this is stemming from the same series of incidents because they didn't have, in their minds, credible corroboration. They had Joel Greenberg, a walking criminal enterprise, the former tax collector in Orlando, and he was trying to get out of his life sentence, and he did. He was cooperative. And they have the underage girl who's now an adult film star. And I think the feds saw, these are our two witnesses. We need something more. They don't have jury appeal. One's a professional liar, Joel Greenberg, and the other one has a profession that's not going to endear her to the jury. Also, she lied about her age when she went on the Seeking Arrangements website. So not to say it's right or wrong about what she does or anything, but it's just a reality that the DOJ is not going to take down MAGA congressmen unless they've got the goods beyond a reasonable doubt. And they didn't think they had enough corroboration. So what you're seeing now is that I think Gates will be expelled from Congress like George Santos. I think that's where it's headed because he pissed off the Republican leadership, especially Kevin McCarthy.
You think they're going to expel him from Congress?
I do. I think that's inevitable.
Well, Kevin McCarthy basically threw him under the bus and said he believed it was true, and that, and he's saying also that he was trying to force him to drop the case, right, or to get involved or somehow intervene in Matt Gaetz' case, and he wouldn't do it, and that's why Kevin McCarthy says he's no longer Speaker of the House.
Well, Matt Gaetz wanted Kevin McCarthy to drop the investigation, the House investigation against him.
The House
and he
investigation.
Did. Right, it is
Yeah.
the House investigation. That's the only thing he can control. And Gaetz and McCarthy never liked each other to begin with. And so then Gaetz took out McCarthy, and now McCarthy is out for bear. McCarthy funded Gaetz' opponent in the Republican primary, but he found a Republican who worked for DEI. And so in a Republican primary, it didn't work. He was a DEI consultant from Missouri. You got to do better candidate research in a Republican primary, man.
What do you think is going to happen with Mark Robinson? Have you been following this Mark Robinson in North Carolina? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, what I'm hoping will happen is it'll turn on the Republican leaders who are now walking away from him. You know, he's looking around for Trump and the MAGA leadership. They're not even inviting him to his rallies anymore. He's not invited. He's persona non grata. I think he's stuck with Laura Loomer in the back room with a picture on the wall saying, "Do not let them in."
Yeah. I want to talk about this because this is something that we have been discussing on this show, and it's been, quite frankly, in the news all over the country. I want to get your thoughts on another legal matter that we covered a great deal this week, and that is on Tuesday, a Missouri man convicted of breaking into a woman's home and repeatedly stabbing her was executed over the objections of the victim's family, executed over the objections of the jurors who sat on the case, and the lawyer who prosecuted him. The man was Marcellus Williams, 55. He was convicted back in 1998 of the killing of Leisha Gale, who was stabbed during a burglary of her suburban St. Louis home. Yesterday, despite the objections of the 3 liberal U.S. Supreme Court justices, the MAGA majority denied him a stay of execution and sent him to death. There are people who are saying that the Supreme Court murdered him. Here's our friend over at MSNBC, Joy Reid. Watch.
Citizens Project has confirmed that just in the last hour, Marcellus Williams was executed by the state of Missouri for his conviction in a 1998 murder that he insisted he did not commit. It comes despite strong opposition, including from a top St. Louis prosecutor, as well as the family of the woman Willis was accused of killing, who said he should serve a life sentence instead of the death penalty. And as several questions still surround the case that brought his conviction. Williams' attorneys claim that the prosecution mishandled the murder weapon and had improperly struck prospective jurors because they were black. But yesterday, Missouri Supreme Court and governor ultimately refused to intervene. And tonight, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected 2 appeals to spare Williams' life over the objection of the liberal justices, Ketanji Brown Jackson, Elena Kagan, and Sonia Sotomayor. Williams is the 3rd inmate executed in Missouri and the 15th in this country this year. He was 55 years old. He will never be older because Missouri is a state and we are a country that maintains a system of official killing without mercy, even amidst evidence of innocence.
I agree. I don't think he should have been put to death. I think there were too many questions. The fact that the family didn't want him put to death, the fact that the prosecutor didn't want him put to death, the current prosecutor, Wesley Bell, didn't want him put to death. You said the jurors, I wasn't familiar with that.
The jurors who prosecuted, the jurors who were there on the case said, no, we don't want him.
But with that said, the one part I would take issue is I don't think he's innocent. There was no evidence that he's innocent. There were issues with jury selection. They had a jury, they struck black jurors, and the prosecutor at the time struck one juror, apparently, because he looked like the defendant. That, to me, is like grounds for a reversal. That should not happen. You're not supposed to strike jurors for bad reasons. Race cannot be a reason why you strike jurors. The other issue was evidentiary, that they thought maybe there was another fingerprint on it, but they couldn't test the murder weapon because it had been touched by prosecutors. But the jury found him guilty. The family thinks he's guilty. That's why they want him to serve life in prison, not be released. So I actually don't believe he was innocent. With that said, when you execute someone, you better be Completely, sure. It shouldn't be, I believe he's guilty. That's not enough to execute him. So I think the better solution would have been to what most people wanted, convert the death penalty, in this case, to a life sentence.
But so I hear what you're saying about the evidence. So if you have all of the folks who are saying that, right, and they're not 100% sure,
right?
Wouldn't you rather err on the side of caution rather than putting someone? Do you think that is this a problem with the court? You think when you have a court that's tilts too far one way, whether it's too far to the left or too far to the right, is that that shows the importance of what happens on November 5th? But is that the problem with the jury now? The Supreme Court, I should say.
The Supreme Court is not necessarily considered when people vote. People just don't think about it until it's too late, until they overturn 50 years of precedent in Roe versus Wade, and they give Donald Trump this immunity that has never existed to any president prior. So it's a problem. One question is that I'm surprised that Amy Coney Barrett went along with a conservative majority, because she has been departing from the MAGA right wing on the court. She's voted against them on a number of issues recently, and she's very Catholic. Catholics are opposed to abortion, but they're also opposed to the death penalty.
So what happens because for everyone who's like, where's Donald Trump? What is going on with these cases? So what happens? Give us an update on the cases against Donald Trump, and if he will ever face justice. If he's president, does it go away?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, the federal cases would go away.
And never come back?
Never come back. It'd be done.
Even if he's out of office? Even if he serves for 4 years and out, never come back? It's over?
No. Oh, the federal case will be gone. He will order his attorney general to drop everything. And that's it. But the state cases, the conviction in New York, that will continue. That'll hang over his head, and he will face sentencing once he is out of office.
You mean the 34 count indictment?
Correct.
That one he faces. Yeah. And Georgia, is that over?
It's not over. But who knows where that's going? I mean, that's a mess.
Did she make a really poor decision by having relationships with someone who was on the case?
Yeah, when you're prosecuting Donald Trump, you got to make sure that you are a choir girl. You got to make sure whatever you're doing, you're going to be scrutinized. You can't live in a glass house. And to hire someone who she's having a relationship with, that was just a problem. And then when they make that sworn statement to the court that, oh, no, we didn't have a relationship, or we went Dutch on our expenses, just open us a can of worms. There were so many decision points that could have been made differently that could have kept this case going in the right direction. Now it's put on hold for who knows long.
Who knows how long?
Who knows how long? There you go.
People are pissed because they think that Donald Trump is getting away. See, the vindictive tiger says, that's bullshit, Dave. Dave isn't deciding this.
Vindictive tiger. And by the way, I love the comments because most people are very nice and they say hello, and I hello back.
Right.
But look, I'm just the messenger here. I'm just telling you.
But isn't that the reason that the case is on hold, because of that relationship, right? Because of that, isn't that the reason?
That is the only reason. That's a good case up there. The multi-count, multi-party indictment, I think they had a good case against Trump. But the reason why it's now stuck on appeal, on hold, is because the prosecutor allegedly had this relationship with the special counsel who was getting taxpayer money.
Yeah, Bunny Scoggins in the comments says black women in Georgia are pissed at her for that. A lot of people are, and they understand that. Look, you can have a relationship with who you want to have a relationship with, but you have to read the room. You have to understand where you are in this process. And it was a very, very important case.
The world is watching, and they're going to find any vulnerability, any weakness, and there was one right there.
Yeah. Dave, anything else you want to update us on? Any of the other cases?
Well, I am following, there's a case out of South Florida where a former Republican state senator put up a fake ghost candidate to siphon away Democratic votes. So the Democratic state senator was Jose Javier Rodriguez, and he paid a guy named Alex Rodriguez, an independent, to get in the race to divert votes away from the incumbent, and he succeeded, and a Republican won the state Senate race. So when they tell you that Democrats are all about election scams, they're projecting.
Wow, so what happens to this guy?
He's on trial right now after a couple years of waiting.
You think he's going to be found guilty?
The laws in Florida are so loose and gray. His defense is, yeah, I paid him to run. I didn't violate campaign finance laws. I just gave him a loan, gave him money so he'd run. I'm not the one who paid for his campaign. We'll see.
Always a Florida man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Florida.
Can I plug my YouTube channel?
Well, I guess. Yes, Dave, of course you can. Go
Please.
for it.
I'm the Florida Lawman, but my YouTube channel is True Crime MTN. True Crime MTN stands for Midas Touch Network. Your friends there. And please join us, subscribe, and we talk about all the true crime cases from Diddy to Sarah Boone. That's that woman who locked her boyfriend in a suitcase and left him there to die. You've heard about that one, no?
No, I haven't.
Well, you got to check out our channel.
And
True
what happened?
Crime
Did
MTN.
he die?
Oh, yeah. He suffocated to death while she mocked him and taunted him. And then she said to police that I was asleep. I didn't know what happened. Problem is, she recorded the whole thing.
Yeah. You see what Andrea says, right?
Oh, thank you, Andrea.
Dave is
I like
great.
you
Please
so much
come
better
back.
than Vindictive Tiger. Or whatever.
I'm glad you learned. You know how to do the cable news broadcast, and you know how to do the streaming as well. So good on you. Dave Ehrenberg, I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
sir.
you, Don.
So thank all of you in the comments. Thank you very much. I'm so glad that you joined us. Symone was fantastic. Don't you think Symone was fantastic? Kim H says, Midas Touch. He's over there working with Ben Meiselas over at the Midas Touch, our pals over there. Thank you, Dave, 100%. Dave, I thought they were going to be madder at you about Bonnie Willis, but they weren't. I think people get it now because that case has gone away pretty much. Thank you, Dave, says Lex Serafina.
So nice. Kristen, thank you.
Yeah. So listen, guys, what are you guys doing? I thought you liked me. What happened to the thumbs up? I think it was not even half, and we had such a great show. Don Lemon is handsome. Love you. I love you too, Anna.
It's true.
And oh, stop it. So make sure you hit the thumbs up. Make sure you like and subscribe. Our subscribers are growing, but we want to make sure that they continue to grow. So I will see you tomorrow morning at 10. And there's a poll. Do you think Eric Adams is guilty? 56% say probably, definitely say 31%, 9% say probably, and then the rest say no, are undecided. Okay, so thank you all. We appreciate you joining us. See you tomorrow morning for Hot Topics at 10 a.m.